The Carolina Panthers traded to first overall in the NFL draft and got their franchise quarterback in Bryce Young. But what if I were to tell you that wasn't the most exciting thing they did this offseason? Welcome back to the channel, and what's crack-a-lackin'? It's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know so. Go ahead, become a bro and subscribe. Leave this video a thumbs up if you enjoy the content. As always, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's have that nice, beautiful football discourse as we continue the deep dive series with the Carolina Panthers, as we're going to take a look at the coaching staff, the scheme, the roster, and then at the end, I'm going to give you my prediction for the Panthers in the 2023 NFL season. Keep in mind, I'm actually recording this Sunday because I went camping this whole week, but I wanted to make sure y'all had some content, and I was, not gonna lie, pretty confident that the Panthers weren't gonna make a play for D-Hop or Dalvin Cook. But without further ado, let's go ahead, get into this, because I'm really excited to talk about this coaching staff as they just went ahead, blew it up, brought in Frank Reich, brought in a whole lot of different players with the in this coaching staff that has me really excited. If you're unfamiliar with Frank Reich, he was a former coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Now, while he was there, he preferred to run a pro style offense where it involved a lot of gap blocking, power concepts, inside zone, take advantage of a really good offensive line and what he had in Jonathan Taylor. But the more you learn about Frank Reich, the more you know that he kind of tailors his offense to what his quarterback can do. And to be fair, in Indianapolis, he never really had the opportunity to have a franchise quarterback, as they were basically playing every free agency. It seems like they would go into free agency and grab the bargain bin option at quarterback. And unfortunately, it ended up leading to him being fired, which I felt was a bit unfair because Frank Reich's a fabulous coach. But what I have schematically for him offensively is a way more broader than it seems because of where he has come from, his coaching tree, as he has been under Jim Caldwell, who was known for outside zone blocking, playing out of shotgun. Fun fact, he is an assistant on this coaching staff. So they got Caldwell, but he's been under like Mike McCoy. He's been under Doug Peterson, another guy that loves operating in the shotgun, an Andy Reid prodigy. So I think this offense could do a lot of different things. I don't know what one thing they will stick with schematically, but I kind of feel, at least early on, there's gonna be a semblance of what we saw, what they were doing with the Colts, just a little bit more excitement at the quarterback position. And I mean, it's not, they don't have Jonathan Taylor on this team. They don't. But they went out, they paid Miles Sanders. They have a couple of guys there at run back we'll go over. And it kind of plays into Thomas Brown, who they bring in as the OC. He was formerly the tight ends coach and the assistant head coach with the Rams last season. He's been with the Rams since 2020. But if you look at his history prior, he was a running backs coach for a lot of different Power 5 teams. We're talking South Carolina, Miami, Georgia. So I think the running backs are going to be exceptionally, they're going to be specifically involved with this offense. Especially they bring in Deuce freaking Staley as the running backs coach. And I just like a lot of the hirings they did coaching wise. I mean, they bring in Josh McCown as the quarterbacks coach. So there's a lot of excitement to be had. And keep in mind, at the beginning, I said Frank Reich, he dictates what they run offensively, schematically, based on their quarterback. And he looked at Bryce Young. He was like, is this the guy? Then let's move up and get the guy. Sorry, DJ Moore. We loved what you've done in Carolina, but we need a franchise quarterback. And they went out and they got him. They were like, this is the cat to do it with. And we'll talk more about Bryce Young when we get into the roster. But now let's look at it defensively, because I loved Phil Snow as a defensive coordinator. I thought he was really good at maximizing his players' strengths and being very adaptive and flexible with his scheme and his personnel. And that was probably Matt Rule, not a great coach. At least not a great NFL head coach. Phil Snow was fabulous, though. He really was. And it sucked to see him leave. But they bring in Giro Evero. A lot of excitement to be had because his run as DC with the Denver Broncos last year was just mwah. He had a team that the offense consistently let the defense down. And in terms of what to expect schematically, he's a bit of he's been influenced and worked under guys like Vic Fangio, Don Capers. So with Vic Fangio, we're going to see a lot of the quarters coverage, but with Capers, who was known for being aggressive, he's blitzing, he is bringing pressure from a variety of different angles and a variety of different positions. So he kind of blended the two last year in Denver, where we saw like a 3-4 base defense with a lot of blitzing, but they were playing those quarters coverage. And fun fact, Don Capers is an assistant on this freaking squad. There is a lot to be excited about just from the coaching staff. They have D'Angelo Hall as a DB's coach here. This is just good old fun to be had, and it's gonna get more fun when we talk about the roster and what to expect and who might get utilized the best in these schemes. It's just great coaching all around. So let's just go ahead, get to the offense. But first, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is currently one of the most premier fantasy betting apps, and they got a best ball tournament with $15 million in cash prizes. So if you sign up at Underdog Fantasy using promo code Broshmo, they will match your first deposit up to $100. Remember, sign up with promo code Broshmo and they will match your deposit up to $100. That's right, and they don't just do football. But as always, my friends, bet responsibly. Let's get into this offense, starting with Bryce Young. Yes, indeed. This was the hand-picked, chosen guy of this offense. And if you're not familiar with Bryce Young, or if you got your doubts, because a lot of people look at the size, they look at the height, and they're like, can he hold up in the NFL? And then they'll point to, I think it was the Arkansas game last year, where he got banged up. But this guy's been a healthy starter for the most part for 2 years. It just happened. He got put on a shoulder, but he's very similar to Russell Wilson. He's very good at protecting his body, even as a runner. I mean, he's got that running ability, but he wants to be a passer. He was easily my top quarterback in this past class because I thought no one touched him in terms of how quickly he processes the field, how quickly he goes through his progressions, and how he attacks not just outside, but the middle of the field. It was next level. I love it. I love it. I love it. I thought his pocket poise, how he maneuvers the pocket, how he is not, when things break down, he's not just looking to run, but he's keeping his eyes downfield to make a play with his arm. There was so much to love about Bryce Young. Like when people were like, yeah, it's kind of like mini Mahomes, like mini in stature. And they're not far off. They're really not. They're really not. I was a huge fan of Bryce Young, and I can't wait to see what Frank Reich has planned for him. They have Andy Dalton if they don't want to start Bryce Young early, but come on. Andy Dalton, competent backup quarterback. I thought he did a fine job with the Saints last year. Like, he's a bridge guy at this point. Matt Corral, I don't know if Matt Corral makes this roster. He might end up going to the practice squad, or maybe they just move on from him in general. Bryce Young is the guy. Now, let's go to my starters on the offensive line, because I think this kind of dictates what we might see from a schematic standpoint. What will they be doing? And I think two indicators, big indicators, at least for me, is their left tackle, Ikem Ekwonu, the sticky icky, who had a very solid rookie season. And I can't wait to see what he does this season. A guy that wants to bury people in the run game. Someone who developed actually very nicely as a pass protector last year. And you might be like, you have Chandler Zavala as a starter. And I say this, Austin Corbett, not going to start the year because of injury, so he's probably going to be put on IR early. So I don't know when he'll really be back, and it's going to be Zavala who starts there. They drafted him in the 4th round, and he's another guy that came from NC State, similar to Ikem Ekwonu, and they ran a lot of inside zone at NC State, which leads me to believe this is the team that's going to be playing a lot of inside zone and split zone rushing concepts. So that's where I think they're going to go in terms of running the football. And like I like Chandler Zavala. Does he instantly become the weak link because he's starting as a rookie? Yeah, really any rookie starter you look at as a weak link. So how can we exploit this guy during their rookie year? But I feel really good about Chandler Zavala, and I feel really good about other aspects of this offensive line. I mean, you got Taylor Moton, who at right tackle is one of the most underrated tackles in the league. He is the anchor to this offense. Or at least his offensive line. You go to center, you got Bradley Bozeman, who if you're like, oh man, if that's the weakest link on my offensive line must be really darn good. He is a solid center. I'm glad he's back here for another year in Carolina. For me, I look at, as the weak link is potentially Brady Christensen, who is a former, he was a tackle at BYU, moved to guard, once get into the NFL. Kind of lacks the power as a run blocker. He's a good pass blocker, but he just lacks that power to be a consistent run blocker. And if I'm going to key on anyone, I feel like that's going to be the guy. I feel like he's going to be the one tested quite a bit, regardless of who's starting at right tackle, whether it's Austin Corbett or Chandler Zavala. Let's go ahead and take a look at the depth along the offensive line here, as they have Cameron Irvin, who's back again, and he's just a solid depth guy. Like if he has to start here and there, I think you're fine. Excuse me, you got Justin McCray, who's he is what he is. Another guy, if like he has to start here and there, it's kind of fine. But then it falls apart there, because then you got like Michael Jordan. Kind of hope he doesn't make the roster. He's just not a good football player. Larnell Coleman, is he another NC State guy? I don't think I'm right about that. No, it's UMass. Okay. But he comes in, he's fine. Still a guy kind of being developed. Cade Mays, another dude who's being developed, formerly coming out of Tennessee. I think he was initially at Oklahoma. Maybe I have that backwards, but a guy that has a great body type, good power, good anchor, that just needs to polish his game, and waiting for things to kind of click upstairs with him. So it's like a lot of ifs, ands, and maybes in terms of the depth. If anything, I'm looking at this like, well, I feel good about Irvin. I don't know how I feel about the rest of the other spots. I couldn't tell you much about, was it Tecklenburg? I have no idea about him. I guess that's on me. They do still have Deontay Brown, a holdover from the old regime, former Alabama big boy. Maybe he moves up the depth chart. I don't know. We'll see. But I feel really good about the starters on this offensive line. Again, with the kind of for me, the weak point, not even necessarily the weak point, but I'm kind of curious, how does he progress in Brady Christensen? However, the weapons on this team is lacking, and I'm sure a lot of people kind of saw who I have at wide receiver and were like, oh, where Terrace Marshall's going to start. What are you talking about? Instead, I kind of have Jonathan Mingo in here, and I think it's kind of a toss-up between those two. I think for sure, in terms of the starters, you have Adam Thielen, who I listed here as a slot player, but I think in 2 wide receiver sets will be an outside receiver. Excuse me. But as an older player, but still a savvy one at that, I think you move him to the slot and you could kind of prolong a bit of his career. He's still a solid receiver. You have DJ Chark, who was banged up last season, but he is a big-bodied vertical threat. And when he got healthy for the Detroit Lions, he showed out a bit. So he's on another 1-year deal, trying to find a more concrete home. So I think for sure those two guys are your stars. However, Terrence Marshall, Terrence Marshall, he almost had 500 yards last season. Showed he was more than a big-bodied slot receiver, kind of had the Justin Jefferson rub, where not a lot of people were confident Justin Jefferson could be more than a slot receiver if he could play on the outside. Like he had the athleticism, he had the body type, but they weren't sure. A lot of egg on people's faces, mine included, though I still had the guy as a first rounder. I wasn't that stupid. But then you have like Terrence Marshall, who kind of followed the same formula. He ended up being the best receiver there for LSU, but they moved him in the slot because that's where they execute a lot of their offense from the passing game, and he did well there. So like he showed last year, hey, he only had 9% of his snaps there in the slot, and he produced well. But I don't think it's well enough to where I'm like gonna discount Jonathan Mingo, who you spent a second round pick on, a guy who's big body, really good athlete, has ability after the catch, just ball skills a bit inconsistent. I think he had like a 14% drop rate his final year at Ole Miss. So I think those two are going to kind of be contended for snaps. However, there's some other names we could really throw in there. As I mentioned, Terrence Marshall, but it's like Laviska Shenault Jr., who is just a fabulous playmaker with the ball in his hands. But coming out of Colorado, the biggest concerns, injuries, which kind of have been a thing, and limited route tree. You look at him, he's like, yeah, someone you just want to get the ball in their hands almost immediately and let them work. So I think we're gonna see him this season. Shi Smith, slot receiver out of Carolina, you might see him in very spread packages. So it's like there's this rotation here that I'm not confident who's really going to see all these snaps, but I'm pretty confident it's going to be at least Thielen and Chark. Even looking at a receiver, like if we're looking at maybe outside options to make this roster, because I'm pretty confident in these three to make the roster. Damari Bird's kind of just a veteran receiver at this point. I don't think he makes the squad. And I mean, I think the only other guy that I could probably maybe say has a shot is Marquez Stevenson, but he's more of a special teamer, more of a return man. So it's like, I think I could say with confidence it's Smith, it's Shenault, it's Mingo, it's Thielen, it's Chark, it's Marshall, and I think we're gonna see a healthy amount of all those guys. See, there's no real top dog here. I mean, there may be a couple of guys that are wide receiver 2s, but you got a lot of wide receiver 3s on this roster, and you kind of hope Mingo could elevate. So the playmakers kind of feels mediocre. I'm gonna let Gojo out real quick. So, little mediocre. You want to look at other playmakers. I have Hayden Hurst listed as a starter tight end. Kind of a no-brainer. He's the guy they bring in here. Ian Thomas. I don't know why the front office loves Ian Thomas so much, but he feels he's more of a tight end 3, in my opinion. Hayden Hurst coming off a pretty solid year with Cincinnati Bengals. So I can't wait to see what he does here. He could honestly end up being an early favorite target of Bryce Young. Tommy Tremble. This is who your tight end 2 should be. He's a solid blocker, good athlete. He's flexible. You could have him as a downhill blocker. That was a big problem I had with Matt Rule and just offensively what they were doing. Who was it last year? Ben McAdoo? Like, get creative and use Tommy Tremble like he should be and like move him a lot of different places. And they just didn't do that. So I'm hoping he kind of moves into that tight end 2 role. And then, I mean, there's not really much else to talk about at tight end. Like, we could talk about, like, Steven Sullivan. He's very similar to Racing McMath, more of a special teamer, jumbo receiver. So, yeah. But I'm excited with the running back core here. As I have Miles Sanders. He's obviously the star here. They paid him 5 years, $25 million. And someone who had an exceptionally good season. He's very familiar, though, with more inside zone or power blocking concepts. That's kind of what he was doing there with Philly, and I feel like they're going to stick with the same. However, you could kind of question maybe they do run a bit of outside zone as Chuba Hubbard coming out of Oklahoma, where they were like wide zone blocking scheme. So very familiar with outside zone blocking, kind of established himself as the running back 2 last year. But when they traded Christian McCaffrey, when Dante Foreman went down with injury, Hubbard stepped up and I thought did a very good job. I think he's a very good running back 2. So I like that pairing. You have Raheem Blackshear. It was more of like there's like third down option, red zone option, short, good low center of gravity. I think a quality committee back. And I think the 4th spot on this roster is probably going to go to one of their rookie UDFAs. Like Spencer Brown, it's kind of whatever coming out of UAB, but you got Cameron Peoples, who is he's a bigger back, taller back, coming out of Appalachian State, and he's kind of like fine. I'm more excited. I want to see Tyon Evans make this squad. Like, I think injuries really screwed his draft projection. He flashed at Tennessee, flashed at Louisville. So for me, he's the guy the 4th guy that makes this roster, and maybe even cuts a little bit of a role for himself with this offense. But with all that still being said, as like I could be as optimistic as I want, but I still feel this offense. I have them listed as they're ranked 21st to 26th. I think they could be better than that, but not much. Like maybe more middle of the road, more mid. Because listen, next year or this season, I think it's gonna be for the offense. It's gonna be a bit bumpy. They don't have a lot of playmakers. They don't have star playmakers. You have a rookie quarterback. There's some things maybe you have to figure out along the offensive line. Like, this is a brand new coaching staff. I think year 2 is going to be freaking phenomenal. I can't wait. Fortunately, you have to go through the hills and valleys, the peaks and lows of year 1. So that's kind of where I'm at with the offense. Let's go ahead and move to the defense because I'm pretty excited about the defenses. These are the stars I got listed. And my big question is, who the hell helps Brian Burns? But also, Brian Burns, will he ever step into the elite, the star category? You'd be like, Brian Burns is a star as a pass rusher. What you talking about? And it's like he's not elite though. Like, he can be, and you could argue like he hasn't had good help around him to really emerge, but he's never eclipsed 70 pressures in a season. Like, his pass rush win rate, while solid, it's not where it's like, oh, this is like a stud edge rusher. I think he's capable of it. We just have yet to see it. That's what I'm saying. We need to see it first. And admittedly, he has not had a lot of help. They have not been able to find an adequate pass rusher next to him. Here I have Yatir Gross-Matos as the listed starter. And he just hasn't been good. He just hasn't. Sorry, not sorry. Last season, you got 28 pressures, 3 sacks on 847 snaps. You look at Marquise Haynes on this roster, who a very solid depth option. He had literally 370 less snaps and basically matched those numbers. 26 pressures, 5 sacks. I'd feel better about Haynes starting over Yatir Gross-Matos. But here I have him listed as starter because he's a young guy. Then again, I mean, he's only got it's only about 3 years younger than Haynes. Feels like Haynes has been in the NFL forever. Feels like he is this old man Logan type of veteran. He's not. He really isn't. But let's take a look at the rest of the depth along the defensive line. As we're going to see it here, as they did draft DJ Johnson in the 3rd round. They moved up for him. I had a UDFA grade on him. I get it. Incredible athlete, great burst, a lot of upside. He is a tight end converted into edge, and you kind of see that in his game from Oregon this past season. He not a lot of pass rush moves, just very unpolished. For me, it was kind of a big reach. Do you expect a lot from him this season? I wouldn't. So at the end of the day, I still think it's Haynes that's kind of getting that rotation role in there with Yatir Gross-Matos. You have Amari Barno, who's more of a DPR designated pass rush only. He's undersized, but the dude flies. Outside of that, there ain't much to talk about. They got Iku Liotu, who I think he was formerly Northwestern, then he went to Auburn. Who at the end of the day, he's an undrafted rookie. Like, what impact is he really? Can you realistically expect from him? So it's like, where's the pass rush help coming? Who's helping Brian Burns? I don't think there's a good option there on the outside. If anything, I'd like to see Haynes probably play a bit more because he's actually just been more productive than Yatir Gross-Matos. Going back to the defense, looking at the starters on the interior, I have Derek Brown, who has just been very solid for this squad. He's a very good run stuffer, and he started to show a bit of that pass rushing upside last few years. You may be like, oh, he only had like a sack. Dude had 40 pressures. Like, that's solid, man. I don't think he'll ever be like a stud defensive interior, but I think he will he will be like this fringe guy we talk about at the top 10. Absolutely top 15, I think. Next to him, they bring in Shai Tuttle, who, I mean, if you're looking for maybe like a nose tackle on this squad, I don't think we're really going to see one. I don't think there's a lot of guys which is, okay, that's not true, but we'll talk about it in a minute. But I don't think there's a lot of guys that fit that criteria. Shai Tuttle, he's only about like 305, but he has played that for the Saints, and he's average. He's like solid. If he's a guy in your rotation you feel good about, I don't think he's anything more than that. If we're going to go look at the depth on this line, as Evero brings in Deshaun Williams, who is more of a 5-tech, 3-tech type of player, and he's more of a rotation guy. Like, if he's like someone who's, I think, seeing more than 500 to 600 snaps in a season, you probably are in a bad place at the position. You have Henry Anderson, who's just solid veteran depth at this point. They also bring in Jalen Redmond as a UDFA out of Oklahoma. In Oklahoma, he played a lot of 3-man fronts, but he was playing out of position. He actually played nose tackle a big chunk of the time, and he's like sub 300. So I'm kind of excited. He's kind of my long shot maybe to make the roster here. But we were talking about the nose tackle position. They got big boys in. Bravion Roy, who was from the old regime. Kind of a lower center of the gravity type of big boy who just gets really good leverage, and he actually has a good first step. You got Marquand McCall, who was UDFA last year out of Kentucky, who really didn't like, sample size was exceptionally small in Kentucky, but he really flashed at the Shrine Bowl, I believe, during practices. And I don't think he was used heavily last year, was he? I'm trying to think off the top. Yeah, he almost saw 200 snaps, but didn't do much with them. But those are guys that maybe could fill that nose tackle role, but more than likely you're working with a rotation, or we're just not going to see, we're going to probably see guys more so try to plug the gaps rather than play over top the center. You got also Raekwon Williams, who he's a depth guy. Depth guy that maybe could play a little bit of special teams. He's just a great character, high motor cat coming out of Michigan State years ago. That's it. Like, I don't think he should be a starter, but I think he serves another purpose on your defense, and I don't mind him there. But you look at this and it's like, where's the pass rush coming from outside of guys like Derek Brown, outside of Brian Burns? You feel like you are not in a good place pass rushing wise offensively. But Jiro Evero, how's he make up for that? Well, with blitzing the freaking hell out of the offense. Looking at his blitz rate from last season with the Broncos, as I pull it up here, he was fourth in he was fourth in blitz rate. Dude blitz a hell of a lot, and he's creative. He's blitzing from all kinds of places, which plays really good when you look at Frankie Luvu, who was a bit of a, I don't even want to say journeyman, because I think he's headed to year four or five. He was initially with the New York Jets, found his way as a free agent to the Panthers, and broke out. Legitimately broke out. Had a phenomenal season last year. If you don't know about him coming out of the draft process, he was played initially Washington State, was more of an edge rusher, but you look at it, he's like, okay, he lacks the size, he lacks the arm length to be a guy you could deploy consistently from the edge. So you're probably looking at him maybe more as a off-ball linebacker with blitzing potential. And yeah, he's done a great job at that. This is the thing, man, with the linebacker position. Typically, and we've seen it with highly drafted guys, that typically in year 3, year 4, things just click for them, and you see it. Like Patrick Queen, things started clicking for him during the second half of last season. So like these linebackers, they need time typically before they can actually make an impact in the NFL. And I think that's what happened with Luvu, man. Things are just clicked, and he got his time to shine, because this is a dude that is an absolute great blitzing linebacker. He had what did he do last year? 23 pressures and 7 sacks on 146 pass rushing snaps. He is so good at timing his blitzes. He is so good at getting nimble between blockers. He's so good at just fighting off of contact and disengaging, stacking and shedding. And you could tell things did click for him. Like the minute he sees these guys pulling, like he sees a guard pulling to the other side, he will meet that guard and somehow put a hand on the ball carrier. Like he was fabulous in run fits last season. He was all over the place. He's a good athlete. He really is. And I think he's fine enough in coverage. I really do. Like he's someone I think you can man up on a tight end or a running back and do a solid job. He knows how to attack with good leverage. He knows how to attack the inside shoulder of pass catchers. He's fine enough in zone, but you know what? Shaq Thompson's your coverage guy anyway. So I think that this is a good pairing here. I really do. And then you look at some of the other guys that might get involved, and they bring in, I can never pronounce his name, but KGH, who started his career in Philly, I believe. Kind of been a journeyman at this point. He went to the Texans, went to the Cardinals. He's always just been solid. And I think, this is like our third linebacker. You feel like you're in a good spot. They've been developing guys like Brandon Smith out of Penn State, who played more of an overhand role for Penn State. Great build, tremendously athletic, great athletic tools, just never really played a traditional linebacker role, and he's kind of being developed in that regard. He played like only 50 snaps last year. You have Aaron Mosby, who at Fresno State, he was a former safety, then got moved to edge rusher, but he lacked the size and the length to do that in the NFL. So he gets moved to off-ball linebacker. Didn't really see playing time, but you're developing those guys. So you don't expect those guys to really make immediate impacts. More so Brandon Smith, who you drafted in the 4th round. Granted, different regime. I mean, same GM though. They sign Bumper Pool, who, as a UDFA out of Arkansas, just good linebacker. Maybe not the fastest, maybe not the most physically imposing guy, but like he is a high motor, just good linebacker. If anything, really good special teamer. I think he actually ends up making the roster. So I'm feeling good about your starters at linebacker. And then we move to the defensive secondary. Let me let Gojo in for this part. All right, so Gojo's now in the building. Watch out. And you look at secondary, and do we need to talk about JC Horn? He's like, when healthy, like a top 10 corner in the NFL. So yeah, good job on that. Dante Jackson's always pretty darn solid. Someone who has slot and boundary experience, and he does well at either. Like, he might not have the most ideal length to play boundary, but he's one of those guys that have kind of like knocked that trend. Like, oh no, I could get by with sub 30-inch arms. Last year, how were you, Don? You were fine. You were fine enough. Only played 9 games though. I got Jeremy Chin now, actually probably playing slot full time for the most part. I mean, you love this guy's versatility. You love that he can be a jack of all trades, but he kind of like his production has kind of struggled because you're asking him to wear too many hats on the defense. So you bring in Von Bell to kind of be that box safety, and now you're like, all right, man, Jeremy Chin, go do your thing. You're doing it in the slot. Look what happened with Isaiah Simmons, where things start clicking for him, where now it's like, hey, we're just going to use you in the slot. And he ended up doing really darn well. Maybe if you let Jeremy Chin focus on doing one thing, or at least one position, you can finally harness that big physical athlete there. So kind of hoping for that. Xavier Woods is one of the best bargain options at safety. Like, he is consistently, I would say, like a top 15 to top 20 safety in the NFL, and he's always getting paid like kind of a bridge starter, and it kind of sucks, but he's always just exceptionally solid. So I feel really good about the secondary if we're going to look at the depth there, which we can. On the outside, I think Keith Taylor probably has the inside track. I know CJ Henderson, he's got a pedigree, former first round pick, but I think Keith Taylor is kind of either played up to, if not better than CJ Henderson at points. I'm kind of cool with either. You got Stanley Thomas Oliver, who came out of Florida International, had a really good rookie year, outplayed the 4th rounder Troy Pride Jr., and that dude's not even on the roster anymore. So that's a really good depth option there. So that's kind of that. Those are your corners. You have Eric Rowe, who they list as slot here, but he's more of just defensive back. He can kind of play a variety of different places for him if they want him at safety, which that's where he mainly played for Miami last year. But they also drafted Jamie Robinson, which kind of scares me because I think they're going to put him in the slot. And I don't think he's a slot player. I know he's undersized, but like, this dude's really good coming downhill. Really good hard hitter. And when he was used in the slot a little, like, primarily, whether it was at South Carolina or when he first got to Florida State, he was prone to get flagged. So like, I'm kind of like, we'll see what happens with there. Sam Franklin's fine. He's a guy that's just seen playing time over the years, and he's been all right, but he's better depth than anything else. If I'm looking at a guy on the outs, like maybe on the outside looking in, that could maybe make this roster, it's Rajon Wright. He ended up being a UDFA. I honestly, quite frankly, thought he was a better prospect than his brother. Yeah, I get his brother has the length, got a little bit more size, but Rajon Wright, man, dude's got ball skills. Dude's got a nose for the football. I kind of like him better. And they got him as a UDFA. Probably looking on the outside, looking in, but just a name to throw out there that you might need to know. Maybe he makes the roster and becomes an impact player. But I'm excited, dude. I think Louvu is going to take his game to another level. I'm excited to see how this team manufactures pressure. Because, like, that's the thing, man. Brian Burns can't do it on his own. How they orchestrate more pressure, I'm very excited. That's kind of why I have him as in terms of where their ranking is. I have them at 21st to 26th. Like, with how good the coaching is and what they might do schematically, they'll probably be better than that. But in terms of what they have roster-wise, like, the pass rush, man, I'm really worried about the lack of a pass rush outside of Brian Burns. I mean, let's just say it. Louvu, like Derek Brown, again, he's up and coming in that. Like, he had a solid year last year, but I got doubts about guys like Yatir Gross-Matos, Deshaun Williams, Shai Tuttle, DJ Johnson. Not to say those guys haven't produced, or at least the ones that I named weren't rookies. But like Williams, if he's like a guy that's starting more than 500 snaps for you, then it's like you probably aren't at a good place with your starters. So yeah, we'll see. Let's go ahead, get to my predictions for the Carolina Panthers as we look at their over and under next season. It's 7.5, and you know what? That's feels about right for me. That's a close call for me, as I have the Carolina Panthers. Let me move this here. Here we go. They do have one of the easier schedules on the roster. In the league. I think they're in the top 10. I have them going 7-10. So right there at 7.5, right on the dot. I have them going 4-2 in the division. I have them actually being pretty solid against winning teams. They're 4-4 at home. Like I said, it's not the hardest schedule, and I think they could get some wins because I think that's how good the coaching is. Like, I think the coaching staff is going to be able to elevate this team to a point they're not there. That I'm not saying like this is a team like we saw with the Giants who massively overachieved, but I think we can see the Panthers overachieve a little bit because of the coaching. But in terms of their trajectory, like this is a team that does have talent, and just adding a few pieces here and there in year 2 under Frank Reich, I think could really take a big step into legitimate contenders. Let's go ahead and look at the game by game as they open the year with Atlanta. Atlanta's at home. I think they could end up splitting. I mean, shoot, man. Atlanta and Panthers had some crazy games last season. I got them beating the Saints at home. I mean, that's potentially another place that they could split at. But then I have them losing to the Vikings. They get Detroit. I actually gave them a win over Detroit. Those are going to be two very interesting teams next year. And that one's in Motor City. I know Detroit Lion fans ain't going to like that. I got y'all losing prior to your bye to the Miami Dolphins. Fins up, baby. I'm a Dolphins fan. What can I say? We'll get to my Dolphins deep dive here in a little bit. But they go into their bye. They come out of their bye with the Houston Texans, who are also coming out of their bye. But Panthers get this at home. I think they're a better team right now. I got them losing to the Colts. Anthony Richardson, if I anticipate him being the starter from day one, and I feel like by week 9, man, things could get rolling with that Colts team. I got them beating Chicago, losing to Dallas. You losing to Tennessee. Do I have them losing to both? To the no. I have them losing. Should they be 3-3? Oh no, I have them beating the Saints twice. That's how I feel about the Saints. Yet I have not done the Saints deep dive just yet. I think really people are downplaying how good the Titans are. Like, yeah, I get it. This is a team with a lot of question marks and whatnot, but that's another team that has really good coaching. A team that definitely plays better than what they are. The Tampa Bay, I think they could split. Like, that defense is really good. They got a lot of good playmakers as well. I have them being the Saints. They split with the Falcons. I got the Packers beating them. I think the Packers could be a team that could be hot down the stretch. Jacksonville, I just think is really good. And then, of course, like I said, I had them splitting with the Buccaneers. And I'm going to say this, man. I think this team's going to be much better in year 2 than it is in year 1 of Frank Reich. But I still think they're going to be pretty darn quality. I think it's fair to expect some bumps, lumps, humps even. But I think we're going to see some of that sex appeal. But they do lack the playmakers right now. There are maybe 1 or 2 questions about the offensive line, but I think they're trending in the right direction. And then they need pass rush. Like, they need someone next to Brian Burns, really, and I think for Brian Burns to take that next step up. Like, again, this is a guy that hasn't had more than 68 pressures in a season. Like, you can't really get to that next step, that next level in your career by being like a sub 80 pressure guy. Like, you're not viewed as a dominant edge 1, maybe more of a fringe edge 1 at that point. And I just want to see I want to see him take that next step like I think he can, because I think he's that freaking good. But of course, he kind of lacks the help around him. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. That's it for the video. I will be back actually tonight. I know I recorded this Sunday, but you're going to be viewing this on Friday, and I get back that night, and I look forward to making more content for y'all, and we should be in my new office by then, so I'm very excited for that. But until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.